Why Kenya, the pride of Africa and home of the fearless? A vibrant, passionate population of great achievers. Land of beautiful savanna and Point Lenana, unmatched majestic wildlife and landscapes. Why Kenya? The entry point to the last emerging economies, the epicenter of the region, the land of hope, breeding place of innovation. Welcome to the first ever Kenya International Investment Conference at the KICC on the 19th and 20th of November 2014. So, why Kenya? Unlimited possibility.
The Lapsset Corridor Program, as you are already informed by our chairman, is a gigantic program that envisages implementation of key 7 infrastructure projects. That is the Lamu Port, the railways, the highways connecting us with South Sudan, Ethiopia, as well as a crude oil pipeline that will be transporting crude oil from Uganda, South Sudan, including Kenya, to the East Coast port at Lamu, as well as 3 resort cities and 3 international airports, as well as a planned refinery and planned product pipeline. Now, why are all this happening in Kenya and East Africa at this particular time or point in time? The reason is that the African continent has been appreciated as the next global growth frontier. Why is the African continent, therefore, envisaged as the next global growth frontier, and today being referred to as an emerging market rather than a dark continent? It is because Africa has the necessary resources that are going to be deployed toward this endeavor. And this has been appreciated by a number of international institutions, including the IMF, the World Bank, among many others. And within the African continent, the East African region is appreciated and is already documented as a pivotal growth frontier within the continent. Why is the East African region, therefore, seen to be so? Because over the last few years, the East African region has consolidated a resource base in terms of oil and gas finds in over 16 countries within the East African region alone. Recently, just over the past 3-4 months alone, it was thought that it was about 12 countries alone. But the oil and gas conference that took place in Cape Town just about 1 week ago did increase that number to over 16. Again, within the East African region, we are talking about Kenya being a hub, a pivotal growth position, a pivotal growth nation that is actually providing access, logistical support, as well as the necessary services that are required for socioeconomic growth within the region. And as such, this has also been documented and appreciated across board. Within Kenya itself, the northern part of Kenya is currently seen as the country's next growth frontier. Why? Because there are vital resources. There is the authentic space. There is the commitment in terms of policy and programs by the government to develop a new growth frontier, to develop a new economy, and to put in place a livable, a working, and many other sorts of environments that we look for across the globe. Therefore, the focus on the African continent can therefore be spiraled, can therefore be connected, and can be linked to a proper chain of growth and investment interests up to the Lapsset Corridor Program itself. This is just an appreciation in map form showing you how the African continent is actually endowed with a number of resources, and these resources are being also sought by many other continents that have used the same resources to develop. This time is the African continent's time to utilize the same resources to put itself in order and become the global growth frontier. And then just an appreciation of the East African region alone, the shaded areas does show that those are major oil and gas resource areas within the region. But they are just not limited to that alone. But those are some of the areas that are currently appreciated, and they go across borders. Now, the case of the Lapsset Corridor project, therefore, does indicate that there is a kind of logic in this flow. I did already say There are 7 key infrastructure projects and a number of support infrastructure services. Of course, the Lapsset Corridor program within Kenya alone has the capacity to introduce between 2 to 3%, to inject 2 to 3% of the GDP growth rate into the economy. And this is only when we are talking about conservative statistics. But when we include what we call the generated and attracted investments, we are definitely expecting higher growth rates, considering that we are actually opening up about 70% or so of the entire country's land space. We are therefore multiplying by 3 investment space, economic space, as well as livable and other elements of spaces that we do talk about. The Lapsset Corridor program is not just about a Kenyan affair alone, neither is it just an East African affair alone, but is indeed a vision to create a land bridge across the African continent. What is the significance of this particular land bridge across the African continent? We do understand that the areas of the continent where it does pass are currently quite enclosed, are currently inaccessible, and there are certain features of human activity that perhaps might not be desirable, mainly conflict. So why are these conflicts taking place? Because there are resources in those areas, but access is quite limited. Opportunities that can be made available to people within those areas of the continent are quite limited. Therefore, the land bridge will therefore open up that particular part of the continent for greater investments, for greater participation by people from those areas of the continent, as well as give impetus, growth impetus to the continent as a whole. And with this, we will transform and change the, what we call the transport and logistics business into the continent, out of the continent, as well as within the continent itself. Of course, the Lapsset Corridor program implementation started on the 2nd of March 2012, and of course, all the regional leaders involved did participate in the unveiling of this particular program in Lamu. And as you can see, the leaders of South Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya were all present. The key infrastructure components therefore begin with the Lamu port. The Lamu port is considered as the point of origin as well as the point of destination for this particular program. There are 32 berths that are planned there, and there is an industrial zone that is planned around the port. Why are we planning a special economic zone around this particular port? Because we want the port to be supported by major manufacturing among many other economic activities, so that it doesn't just become an import zone, or it doesn't just become a point through which we are just exporting jobs and importing finished products, but we are creating jobs. We are energizing our technological age, and we are at the same time strengthening our economic base. The position of the development of this port, as we speak, the government completed the detailed design of the first 3 berths. At the same time, we've already recruited the contractor as well as the supervision engineers. The contract for the port has been signed, and we envisage to commence construction works just within as we end the year. I know the chairman did tell you about this. We envisage to take about 5 years to complete these construction works, that's by 2019. And at the same time, we did not just wait to commence construction works in December, but we've already undertaken a number of other activities, as I will show you. In terms of business, people have been asking, why Lamu Port? Why now? Lamu Port is not just a port like any other port within the region. We do know that we are building a deep sea port with a draft of between 17.5 and 18 meters, and we are also building megaberths. What kind of megaberths are we building? Of a key length of about 400 meters. We know that most of the ports within the region have key lengths of between 250 to 60 to 70 meters. Therefore, we are transforming port business. We are injecting a new kind of port business, a kind of a new service that has been lacking within the east coast of the African continent. Therefore, in terms of business, Lamu Port is going to be able to do about 23 million tons by the year 2030, and this is just within 15 years after it comes into place. And we therefore expect that it will be doing what Mombasa Port does today. Mombasa Port is about 80 years today. In terms of quick business that might be coming to this port, we know that the northern part of Kenya, as well as the areas of South Sudan, Ethiopia, as well as Somalia, and the entire northern Kenya is a major livestock zone. We are going into industrializing and commercializing livestock production, and we are going to put up or put in place the required facilities to be able to export livestock products. At the same time, we know that the economic zone within the ocean that belongs to Kenya, as well as the neighboring countries, is rich in fisheries, and we look forward to tapping this particular resource. At the moment, as we speak, Seychelles is overwhelmed with regard to processing these fisheries, and we know that we have the capacity from Lamu Port to attract necessary investors to partake in this particular industry. In terms of regional market analysis, we do find that Lamu Port has a very unique sense in terms of market outreach. It has the branch that goes to southern part of Ethiopia, and it also has a particular line going to South Sudan and contributing to the land bridge across the African continent. There is also a likelihood that, considering that we will be having a pipeline crossing through the northern part of Uganda to join the Lapsset pipeline, then we expect another new corridor to emerge in that particular dotted line that we are showing there. We are therefore finding that Lamu Port, compared to existing ports, does have a diverse market outreach, with the new markets just opening up in Ethiopia and South Sudan. These are markets that are currently looking for resident port services, and Lamu Port will just be providing just that. In addition to giving support to other markets that are currently served by Mombasa. Giving support, not snatching the market. And of course, the details were presented by my chairman. And we do know that in terms of economic internal rates of returns, we have about 23.4%. In terms of facilities that we've put in place just to support the port development, we've already put in place the port headquarters. Next, security facilities are in place and already fully staffed and equipped. And in terms of the crude oil pipeline, which is the second project, as we speak, the government, together with the government of Uganda and the government of Rwanda, have just signed a contract with the designers to come up with the design of this particular crude oil pipeline. And we expect this to take 5 months. When we undertook the initial study, it was thought that the crude oil pipeline was just going to carry oil from South Sudan. But the game has since changed. Kenya has discovered commercial levels of crude oil, as well as Uganda has also consolidated its position with regard to its crude oil, its oil finds. We are therefore seeing a greater resource that is going to attract a greater investment into this particular corridor. The Lapsset corridor is therefore envisaged or is viewed as what we call a hub oil corridor, with Lamu Port being an oil hub port, and also creating new investment areas based on the oil industry, as indicated on the slide. At the same time, we are looking at other greater sources beyond what we are currently seeing, because exploration for hydrocarbons within the region is quite advanced and goes beyond what we are having in sight. Of course, the crude oil pipeline, I've already told you that we've already identified designers who will complete their work in 5 months. And we expect that within the second or third quarter of next year, we should be having the EPC tender floated, so that we can have competition taking place for purposes of construction of that line. I know my chairman did tell you that the government is thinking very strategically on how to draft strategic investors into this pipeline, at the same time to allow citizens of our countries to partake in this particular investment, because this is an investment with returns. And it is when we allow our citizens to take part in these investments that we actually generate wealth, we retain wealth, and also distribute wealth. And that is the only way in which we can grow the economy with the double digit. At the same time, sustain that double digit growth rate. At the same time, be able to move to a greater economic growth and development status beyond the middle income economy that we've already achieved. We do expect this project to be completed by the year 2017-2018, and that will be the first time, or the time for the first floor of oil. And of course, in terms of internal economic return for this project, is about 21.6%. That is quite attractive for private sector. Of course, we do know that this crude oil pipeline will require to be heated. We've already taken power all the way to Lamu, from 360 kilometers away from Rabai. And we are also going, next, we are going to have other power lines running across the corridor crossing the corridor to serve the corridor at a greater length. Why are we doing this? Because history and our past has taught us that unless we do appropriate power transmission across the entire country's landscape, we will not be able to attract industrial investments. We will not be able to grow our industries. We are therefore going ahead of time to create the impetus, the services that are required by investors throughout the entire corridor, so that we can allow investors to make quick decisions rather than think later. In terms of the road infrastructure, the road component, as well as the railway component, the road infrastructure is already under design. That is between Lamu, Garissa, Isiolo, Lokichar is under design with the support of the African Development Bank. The section between Nakodok as well as Lokichar has already been designed with the support of the World Bank. And the section between Moyale between Isiolo up to Moyale, about 505 kilometers, is currently under design, under construction, with 300 kilometers already completed out of the 505 kilometers. The entire road is currently having about 4 contracts on the Kenyan side, with the first contract completed and the other contracts are at advanced stages. And to let you know that this project is not just being implemented on the Kenyan side alone, we are having another 500 kilometers being constructed as we speak on the Ethiopian side. This is close to another 500 kilometers under 6 separate contracts running at the same time. Next, please. So within the next 2 years, you should be able to drive between Isiolo up to Addis Ababa. Again, that's a sample of the completed section, quite in good condition. This is a section currently under construction works. This is the section between Merile River and Marsabit. That's the section between Marsabit and Turbi, advanced in construction, over 69% completion rate. That's the section between Turbi and Moyale, under advanced construction stage, about 39% complete. That is on the side of Ethiopia, where we are having a motorway between Addis Ababa and Mojo, and that is the section, that's how the section between Mojo and Hawassa looks like. That's about 370 kilometers. And between Hawassa and Isiolo is the 500 kilometers currently under construction. So the entire stretch of road will be providing a very high level of service for road users across the region. We therefore expect, we do know that there might be difficulties in attracting private sector investment as we speak for purposes of construction at the moment. But going with an increased or expected increment in traffic levels, we are expecting that the private sector will come on board at the operation stage. That's the cross-border facility that is being put up to facilitate cross-border movement with goods and services. The fourth component is the Lapsset international airports. We have got 3 international airports, one at Lamu, one at Isiolo, and one at Lake Turkana. We do know that there might be low levels of traffic as we speak, but what the government has done is that we've gone into the development of intermediate airport facilities, 1 in Lamu, 2 in Isiolo, as well as the one that is already existing around Turkana. Why we are doing this is to create the traffic and business for air transport, logistics, and business that is required by private sector for the development of the international status airport. And this will be developed by private sector, yes. That is Isiolo Airport, which the runway is ready, the terminal facility under construction. The resort cities, yes, also at 3 different locations, Lake Turkana, Isiolo, and Lamu. And these are backed up by very natural attraction sites, quite numerous, both at Lake Turkana. That's an example of Lake Turkana. Those attraction sites quite existing in very spectacular fashion. And also in Isiolo, having a highland resort site backed up by over 5 national parks, as well as national reserves, sanctuaries, as well as many other facilities, including Mount Kenya within the environment. And Lamu, of course, you know that it is a World Heritage Site, which has a greater international attraction, plus a existing pristine tourism environment, plus a planned resort city that are all going to provide varied services to international tourism consumers. And all this will be available to private sector investment. What the government is doing is to provide facilitation, to provide the planning, to provide the requisite infrastructure so that private sector can invest in all these opportunities. Of course, we have the high Grand Falls, that is to produce about 500 megawatts of power plus water to be taken all the way to Lamu City, among many other settlements along the highway, plus providing water for irrigation as well as downstream flood control. Then the infrastructure that we are going to be developing is not just unto its own self alone. There is a reason why we are building this, because we want to energize other sectors of the economy where private sector might even find greater investment opportunities, diverse investment opportunities, and more lucrative investment opportunities. For example, the agricultural value chain. We have just undertaken a study through the Ministry of Agriculture that has shown that we have over 10 agricultural value chains that are lucrative for private sector investments. The land space is available, the investment climate is quite ripe, and the data is already available. One of the components that I wanted to expound about is the livestock. We do know that within the neighboring countries, as shown on that map there, is quite endowed with the livestock resource. What requires to be done is to improve the quality of that particular livestock resource by creating disease-free zones as well as investing in processing facilities, both at the port and within the corridor. And that is a gold mine for investors. We've also identified 3 key corridors that are going to be feeding into the main Lapsset corridor all the way to the port. And all these areas are ripe for investments. And because the livestock is already existing, and it's not something that we need to start to prepare now. There will be industrial parks, considering that we are going to have about 50 kilometers on either sides of the corridor as special investment zones. And those of you who understand special investment zones, because you do, you know how the state of Gujarat in India created these kind of special investment regions and special investment zones. And they have been able to attract investors, provided that there are requisite infrastructure. And that's what we are doing with the Lapsset Corridor Program, to provide this requisite infrastructure to support investment. Yes, we do know that there is a lot of emphasis that we are already giving you from this platform in Kenya. But what we are telling you is that Kenya is the hub for you to reach the rest of the market in the region. And the corridor that we are currently developing, just to give you an example on the Ethiopian side, what is already existing does show that there is population there that needs to consume a lot of things that can be invested into by private sector, both on the Kenyan side and on the Ethiopian side. There are a number of medium-sized towns, just like you have a huge population in Kenya. The southern part of Ethiopia, considering that Ethiopia has close to 90 million people, with the southern part of Ethiopia having the majority of their population, we therefore expect that the Lapsset corridor, and by basing your investments in Kenya and linking into the region, you are going to have a greater market outreach. Those are some of the farms that also exist on the other side of the border. Other resort facilities also exist on the other side of the border, among many others. In terms of economic returns, of course, we've already spoken about the figures, and more of it is explained there. A lot of private sector investors do ask, why is the government calling upon us to come? Is there support from the government? Is there leadership? Is there direction? Is there an example? We are telling them, yes, there is more than an example. There is more than leadership. We are already doing it, so that when you come, you are not alone. You do it with us, because we believe in what we are telling you. First and foremost, we have the correct policies in place, cutting across all sectors where you might require to invest. From energy, to roads, to ports, to airways, to railways, all these are available, and they do have a welcoming hand for private sector investors. In terms of financing, we are not just calling you to come and put your money where we have not put our money. As a government, we have put our money in infrastructure, and we continue to put it. And with regard to Lapsset Corridor Program, you've seen that we have put our money in roads, we are putting our money in the ports, we are putting our money in airports, we are putting our money on all aspects where we are calling you to come upon. So we are creating a platform for private sector investors to come and take advantage of what we have provided as a sense of concession for you to do business, and at the same time to deliver the services that the government of Kenya is putting forward to its people. In terms of laws, we do receive a lot of questions whenever we go to a number of investment forums, that how safe are our investments? We are telling you from the horse's mouth that your investments are safe because we have put in place the required laws, beginning with the Constitution 2010, that does guarantee private sector investments that does guarantee protection for private sector assets and many other returns. Does guarantee, a repatriation of your returns, lawfully that is. We also have an environment. We also have, within the laws that is, we did hear from Engineer Kamau, the PPP Act is in place, the PPP regulations are in place, the PPP policy is in place. All these are supporting private sector investments. When we talk about the economy itself, the Kenyan economy is stable. We have a servant leadership, and this is what a lot of investors look for. Is there a leadership through investment? Is there a leadership quality in your leaders? Yes. And yesterday you saw from our president here, His Excellency the President himself, was taking the leadership even in answering questions from investors. We have mature politics in this country, and our elections does not affect the level of investments. It does not affect the stages of investments. In any case, it provides for continuity. Therefore, the economy is the right place. This Kenyan economy is the right place for you to invest. Of course, when you invest with us, definitely we are all creating a seamless interconnectivity within the region that gives private sector the advantage to do greater business. Not just in Kenya alone, but the entire region. We are raising the profile of the country as well as the region. Therefore, coming to Kenya, you participate in a greater economy. We are increasing electric power generation so that we provide that vital service that a lot of investors are looking for, that a lot of industrialists are looking for. A number of industrialists do ask, do you have the capacity in your power sector? We are telling you, yes, we have it, and we will continue to strengthen that particular position because it's not a one-off thing, but it is a continuous service. We are attracting private sector investments. We are not just doing this as a one-off thing, but it is a government policy. It is a government position. It is a practice in our economy that we are attracting private investors into Kenya. We are creating capacity in the infrastructure sector. We are creating employment. And of course, all investors do like when this becomes the outcomes of their investment. Of course, at the end of the day, when Lapsset Corridor program is up and running, we do expect key nodal growth points to emerge, as already indicated there. And these are not just government business. These are meant for private sector to take advantage of, to invest and to get returns. And this is the area of investments that are going to be energized. When we talk about generated and attracted investments, then we'll have diverse investments and we'll have a new economy in which both private sector, the government and the people of Kenya will be happy, as well as the region. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the short presentation I had. It might have taken longer. Thank you.